Welcome to 2024 election season. It's a crazy time. 1968 was also a crazy time. Divided, war, hysterics, just like 2024. This year we find ourselves with Joe Biden, Donald Trump, but there's a new one, Robert Kennedy Jr. His father ran in 1968, unfortunately was assassinated, and his uncle was President John F. Kennedy, who was assassinated in 1963. This election year is so uncanny familiar to 1968, and I'm here to tell you about it. In 1963, John F. Kennedy was assassinated, and Lyndon B. Johnson became the president. Soon after this, he passed major victories with the Civil Rights Act, which made his popularity soar. In 1964, he was re-elected president on a full term, and then surged troops into Vietnam, killing his popularity. And this sets the stage for one of the most historic and interesting campaigns, the 1968 presidential campaign. As the 1968 election cycle began, on the right-hand side you had Richard Nixon, who was a very experienced politician, a senator, and had ran for president in the past. On the left, you had Lyndon B. Johnson, an incumbent president with terrible popularity because of the Vietnam War. With this said, there was a second candidate on the Democrat Party that decided to challenge Johnson, and his name was Eugene McCarthy, an anti-war Democrat, wanted us to get out of Vietnam, and with this, he gained a lot of popularity, eventually leading to Lyndon B. Johnson saying that he would not run for president for a second full term. As Bobby Kennedy entered the presidential election, he had been a junior senator for the state of New York, and during this time, he had toured some of the most poverty-stricken areas in the country, the Delta of Mississippi, parts of Chicago, parts of New York, and one area in particular that really caught his attention was the farmlands of California. He joined forces with those farmers through their struggle for better pay, living conditions that he found appalling. Both Eugene McCarthy and Bobby Kennedy were both anti-Vietnam. Both wanted to get out of Vietnam, but Robert Kennedy separated himself with the way he spoke and cared for the poor and how he spoke about the division of the country. He saw our country going to a place that he didn't want it to go, and many Americans agreed. And after the California primary, it had become apparent that Bobby Kennedy would be the next president of the United States. Immediately following his victory in California, Bobby Kennedy gave a speech at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles, where he was assassinated soon after. And this sent shockwaves through the Democrat Party. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and now Bobby Kennedy. At the 1968 Democratic Convention in July, it was ultimately decided that Hubert Humphrey would run for president on the Democratic ticket. This led to a sweeping victory for Richard Nixon, and so goes the historic 1968 election. In 2024, we find ourselves in a similar time. War seems to be everywhere. Division cannot be any higher. People seem to be poorer than they were yesterday as inflation rises to the top of our minds. It's so familiar to 1968. And again, we find ourselves with a Kennedy on the ballot. Many people don't even know that Robert Kennedy Jr. is on the ballot for 2024. Well, he is. He's actually running as an independent. As the media focuses on Biden and Trump, nobody pays any attention to Robert Kennedy Jr. But he's there, and he can win. He's pulling high numbers on people below the age of 40, also with women and minorities. So if you haven't checked him out, I encourage you to do so. There's a lot of information out there. Just get away from the mainstream media. This election year might be the most important in our lifetime. You can vote for whoever you want. I just think the American people should be informed about every candidate.